Greetings, scientists. My name is Steve. I'm one of the instructional coaches for science, and we're just going to talk about an unboxing here, like the YouTubers do. You are going to see a box that comes in after you've ordered your living materials that looks like this. It says live material, avoid heat and frost. These are living things inside of here. So what I want for you to do is to tell your administration, tell your people in the office to be expecting this and let you know as soon as they come in. Because you know, living things have needs. So inside here we've got plants and animals. Plants and animals need to have air, they need to have water, they need to have food, and plants need to have some space and some light. So we want to make sure that we're getting them out of here because they're not going to get all that inside of this box. So we're going to kind of open this up and go through this and see what it is that comes with this today. So as we open, we have some instructional paperwork that comes in here. It says free resources. This is some stuff from Carolina, so read this over what's there. Important care instructions for your animals that you have. Make sure that you're looking at those. That's going to help you out. There's directions as to what to do for each one of these. It's also in the appendix part of your teacher's guide. It'll give you that information. A nice little letter here. They want correspondence with you. They probably don't want you to write you back, but read about that one. It also has the packing list. It has your order information. If your organisms arrive and there's a bunch of dead ones and you don't have enough for what you do not contact Warm Pots and say, hey, do this for me. There's customer care instructions on here. They will take care of that information. They'll ship you out fresh ones to make sure you have what you need. They're not even going to ask you to ship back with dead ones. Also, there's some important information. They put it in bright colors so that you'll notice it. This right here talks about what things you can do with these animals and not do with them. How to maintain them, what things you should not release outside into nature. That's important right here, information. Okay. Also inside of here, you've got bubble wrap to protect things. If your kids need a pillow for taking a nap, you've got one. In here, you've got moss that's coming in these containers. This is great for the habitats for some of our critters. Also in here, the organisms kit these are saplings, pine saplings. So you'll be able to see those. We'll open these up and get those put in there where you need them. These are trees. So when you're all done, plant a tree, Trees for America. We can make sure that we've got that information. It's out there. Arbor Day's coming up here. We already passed Arbor Day, didn't we? Plant a tree. We also have in here are the Millipedes. We'll open those up for you and you'll be able to see those. We've got a couple of containers of those. We also have in here our Beetles. So these are the little roly-polies, as they call them. So those are some of our animals that we have. We're going to put those into a holding tank. We have some, again, Brugia. These are the little mosquito fish that they're swimming around in there. You can see them down there. This water is for them, but they have to make sure that we're giving them what they need as well. So they do have some air, they do have some water, but they don't have enough. So we gotta make sure that we take them out of there shortly. We also have some Elodia. So this is the aquatic plants that we're gonna have, that they're gonna be putting in there for our animals that are in the water, so that they have able for the plants to grow, because the animals that are in there will eat off of these. These also will be creating oxygen, so that also put some oxygen into the water for them. And then lastly, we have aquatic snails, and so they're very important for keeping our water clean from the wastes that are being put in there by the animals that are in there. So now we've got all of our materials here. Let's pull it all out. This is our unboxing here. And we're going to talk a little bit about the terrestrial organisms first. So our terrestrial organisms first, let's talk about our millipedes. Millipedes are the fun ones. And just to help your office people to know that living things are coming, I often would tell them, hey, we got living materials coming. Make sure that the snakes make it to my room as soon as they get here. They don't like snakes, so they make sure that you know. For the record, these are not snakes. We had somebody say that they were snakes, and that's not quite right. So these are our millipedes. They do have a lot of legs. They are really, really cool. They will hold on, they will climb around you, they will poop in your hands. So these are your millipedes. They're also escape artists. So when you're putting them in here, let's make sure that we're doing some things to keep them from escaping. Now, as we're making these little holding tanks for them, in the appendix of your teacher's guide, it talks about having a couple inches of soil. I'm going to grab my other one because this is my shallow one. So the millipedes need a little bit more depth. They are larger animals. So about 2 inches of soil in there. Make sure it's moist. I put some in there, some water out of the tap in there and mixed it around until it clumped up, because we don't want it too dry, because again, living things need water. So they have moist in there. I also grabbed some leaves out from underneath the tree. Also grab some chunks of wood. They like to have that, the decaying stuff. Don't grab the stuff that's fresh and green. They like the stuff that's starting to fall apart. As you're out looking underneath the trees, remember to look for leaves of 3. Do not get poison ivy, because Warren Potts said to go grab some leaves and blame him, because we don't want that to happen today. So we've got moist soil, leaf litter that's there, some wood. We're also going to take a little bit and put some of this moss in here, because this is something that they like to have as they're in their habitats. This is just the holding tank for you. Please make these habitats. There's another video that you have to help you to make these habitats for that. But make sure your students are part of that building. I think that's very, very important for students to understand, to get their hands dirty. As Miss Frizzle would say, get messy, make mistakes. So the moss, we're going to take this and put this in here. I want to make sure that it's good and moist. So this has been sitting in a bag a little bit. I'm just going to spray it down a little bit with a spray bottle. And I'm going to put that so the green side is up, because the bottom side is the root side. So that would go down into there. So we've got the roots for the plants in there. We've got the moist soil. We've got everything that they need here. So I'm just going to take these and pull these out. And I'm going to put these into this holding tank. Let's put this right here so you guys can see it from the top too. And we're just going to take and we're going to pull these out. Inside of here, there is some soil, there is some paper towel. The paper towel is important for them just to have something to crawl into, because they like to do that. Oh, there's a small one. Kind of cute. So that video is working. And then I'm just going to toss this in here. Give us a little bit more soil that's there. That part's really dry, so I'll make sure I spray that part down. I'm going to open up this. Ooh, that's a massive one. Look at that. That's a big one. And then we got a bunch of small ones in here, so make sure that you're looking and carefully going through those. Inside of the kit for this, there are some plastic gloves. Plastic gloves are great for kids. If you're handling this without the gloves, make sure that you are washing your hands afterwards. Anytime you're doing any of this stuff, wash your hands, because there is bacteria and things that are on here we don't want the kids to get sick from. Emptied that one all out into there. We've got a whole bunch of them of varying size, from small to large. And because that's so dry on there, I'm going to put a little more moisture. I'm going to spray it right on those critters, because they don't need a shower today. Now for this, I want to make sure that I put my lid on tight. The lid has breathing holes. I'm going to close it. It is not completely tight there, so there is some gap for some air to get in there. I don't want to leave it wide open, because they're escape artists. Once that's on there, I'm going to take some Scotch tape and I'm going to tape the lid down, because I don't want them to escape. If you've ever been to the administrative center, we had some of these at the director's office, and some of them escaped. There's a lady whose cubicle was right outside of the office, and she found one underneath her cubicle one day. She squealed. I felt bad for her being scared, but it was kind of comical. For the record, she's no longer with the district. She moved on. I think we scared her out of here. There we go. So if you can see the lid here, there's just a tiny little slit of air gap that's in there, but there's still airflow in there for our critters, for what they need. All right, so put this one aside. These need to be in a place that's not too hot, not too cold, it's just right, and they'll do well in there. We're going to have something that looks very similar. This one has less soil because the pill bugs are smaller. They don't need as much. Again, moist soil is in here, some leaf litter and some wood pieces. And we're just going to open this one up very similar to the other. And you'll see our little pill bugs that are in there. Aren't they cute? Just the face that a mother could love. And we're going to pull that out and put those into here. And they're going to go through all of this soil and hide out. The more soil you put in there for these, the harder they are to find. So when you start looking for them to put them in there, you'll have a hard time finding them. There's a bunch of them. Look at that. See them all on there? So I'm going to leave this paper in there. I'm going to give it a little mist to make sure that it stays dry, but I'm going to make sure that allows them, let's say it stays dry, to stay moist, excuse me. And these are not escape artists, so you can just put the lid on there and they will be just fine. Next we're going to, I want to add a chunk of moss to that one. This moss you can break into chunks, so I don't want to give all of it to there. Like I did before, I'm going to spray it down and stick a chunk in here. Next we've got a container. This one's all for our plants. I'm just going to make sure that we have what we need for our plants. Plants need to have several things, and the needs of animals and needs of plants is very important for kids to understand. It's shocking that when they realize that they need to have air. So one of the things we want to do is make sure that these are planted in there. This is the root ball that's on this little sapling, and we want to make sure that we're planting it that deep that's in there. So we're going to make this hole all the way down towards the bottom. This soil is nice and moist, nice and wet, and we're just going to kind of bring the soil up around it. And I'm going to kind of plant these in rows. They don't need a whole lot of space right now because they're not going to be in here for long. And we've got, what did I get, a dozen of these here? No, 6 of them, 8 of them. Make sure that they've got the ability to get some light. You're going to be surprised at how much they'll green up. This is very, very light colored. You're going to make it a little bit darker. But they need to have some space for the roots to grab water from the roots. And they're going to be grabbing some nutrients from the soil, some minerals from the soil. Now I've got this other space that's in the middle here, and I'm just going to go ahead and put our chunks of moss in there, just so they have the ability to, these things can live in here for a while, but they have needs, so you're going to want to at least mist them down, make sure that they have what they need. There we go. So now we've got a holding tank for our terrestrials, so our plants and our pill bugs as well as the millipedes. Now we're going to be talking about your aquatic plants. In your delivery of living materials, you're going to find a bag that says Elodia, or a lot of different versions of it. So it's Canadicis or Cambodia or Elodia. They also call it Elodia, depending on who you are. So what we're going to do is we're just going to rip this thing open. It's important for us to go ahead and rinse it because this has been in a large vat of things that are growing. And so we're just going to rinse it off. We see now that we've got this, what kids would call seaweed. There's multiple different types of plants that are in here. So the fact that it has different names on it is because there's different things. This right here is the Elodia, has the small leaves, and the Canadicis, I believe, is this longer, the longer leaf piece that's there. We're just gonna take some cool, fresh water and give it a good rinse. I see some brown coming off of there, so there are some things that are coming off. Just gonna give it a good rinse. Sometimes they come and they're wrapped in rubber bands, so we go ahead and carefully take the rubber bands off too. Now that we've had these rinsed, I'm going to take and go ahead and put them into the holding tanks for the fish and for the snails. So hold on a second. So as you're preparing for your aquatic organisms, you're going to want to have some water that's been set out. This water was put into 5-gallon buckets yesterday. Part of the reason for you wanting to do this yesterday was for the water to become room temperature, because we want the water to be the same temperature as the water the fish are coming from, because a change in temperature is shocking to their little bodies, and that may cause them to die from a stress and having some complications from that. Second, the water that's coming out of your tap is chlorinated because it's coming out of our the city water system. Setting it out allows the chlorine to evaporate out of there, so it says that it is dechlorinating it. Also within your refurb is this yellow bottle, and this is for treating of aquariums for different aquatic animals. So taking this and adding for about every 10 gallons is about a teaspoon of this, about 5 milliliters. So a decent little squirt in each one of these buckets helps to treat that water and make it better for the animals as they're coming in. Notice that I have the snails were floating in the water. So this is trying to get the water that's here and the water that is in the bucket to be at the same temperature. It's a gradual thing. Your kids are going to learn in third grade and start talking about how temperature change happens. This is something that's going to happen, is that the heat from one water, the warmer water, is going to one of the cooler water, and they're making them end up being at the same temperature. Then the same thing with the fish. I'm just going to take the thermometer and stick it in here. Your kit has come with an aquarium thermometer, which is a glass tube. It's about 3 inches long, and it will float in there, and you'll be able to take the temperature of the water. You don't have one of those this time, but I do have one of these thermometers for the weather kit. So I'm just going to kind of let that look to see as to what it is. This temperature is sitting around 72 degrees. That's a good room temperature that we have. One of the things that we do also is to make sure that we're not shocking these little critters, is what we're going to do is we're going to take and tear this open, and I'm going to take and stick a little bit of water from here into it. Not a lot, just a little bit, because I don't want to I don't want to shock them with the change in the water, but I'm just going to take, and I have this torn a hole in it, and I'm just going to stick and dip it down below and let a little bit of that water go into it. And so we're going to start getting the waters to be similar in their properties as to how they are. So we're just going to do that. Put that over the edge, and I'll put the handle to hold it there. And I'm going to do the same thing with the fish. We've got the blue water that's here. This blue water is there to help and to give them some nourishment, and that's what the blue is for. Is also there to help us to see them better. We're going to have to scoop them out of there in a little while. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. This one right here is my female Gambrusia. Just put a little bit of that into there. All right. Tuck that to the side. It won't float as well because we're letting the air out of the bag. I don't want them to go under right yet. So I'm going to let a little bit of that water into here. And I'm going to tuck it aside. And I'm going to wait 15 minutes or so and to let them do the thing, and then I'll do it again until we get it to be of a great temperature between all of the spots, and then I will place them in there. Before I do that, we had just gone ahead and rinsed our plants. So I'm going to take and put some of my plants in each of these containers, some of the different types. Plants are a food for organisms, so they'll float in there and they will give them food. They also take in carbon dioxide and give off oxygen, so they're going to be also be putting oxygen into the water, which is, if you have an aquarium at home, large one, a lot of times you've got an air filter that is oxygenating that water for your animals. So this is kind of doing the same thing naturally. All right, so we're going to wait 15 minutes, and then we'll add a little bit more water to this process, and then eventually we'll go ahead and put. All right, so about 15 minutes ago, I put some more water into the bags to help to get the fish and the snails acclimated to the water that's there. They've had the opportunity to become the same temperature, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get the snails out of the bag and put them into the bucket. I'm going to be using a dip net that comes with the kit. The reason why I'm using that one is because these organisms have been in this bag for a little while. Since they've been in this bag, we know what organisms do. They eat, and when things go in, they have to come back out. So there is waste that is in here. I don't want to pour all of this directly in here. I want to catch the organisms that are in here and get them and dip them, put them into this container on our own. So I'm going to use this dip net to get in here and to get some of that out. There we go. I got some of them. There we go. Check that out. You see them? We go ahead and stick those in here and dump it out. To help me out, I'm going to pour a little bit of the water out of here, which allows me to have a little bit better access to the organisms themselves. It'll help me to tear the bag open a little more and not make a mess. The last couple, I'm going to reach in there with my fingers and get them out. They like to attach themselves to the side of the container that they're in. There you go. They just look like a little rock. All right, they're all out. Next, we're going to do something very similar with the fish. I've got right here, the sign says there's 9 Gambrusia in here. They're also known as the mosquito fish. I'm also going to pour some of this water out, trying to not let the fish out. I'm letting it go through the strainer, just in case the fish gets in there, I'll catch him. Now I'm just going to dip into the bag and catch some fish. Tell your kids you're going to go fishing in class on one day and see what they say. Joe, we've got some in there. For the last one, we're going to take our bag of, these are the female Gambrusia. We're going to take the same process of putting them into the water. But one of the things that the directions from the appendix of the teacher's guide says to make sure you keep the males and the females separate at this time. So what we're going to do is I've taken my snails out of the big bucket and put them into the smaller bucket. They don't need as much space. They're smaller. They don't move as much. So I put them into the smaller bucket I have. And I'm going to put these into this other bucket that has water that was pulled out at the same time, so it's the same temperature, the same pH. Chemically, we're in the same spot. We did the acclimation process of adding some water to this one. So now we're going to go ahead and get these fish out of here. We're going to go fishing. Always look in your bag after you're done to make sure there's not one stuck in the plastic somewhere. You do when you throw out your trash can, they don't take the trash out until the next day. Your classroom may start to smell like a meat market. All right, so now we have our terrestrial animals, organisms that are in containers for holding before you make your habitats. We've got our aquatics organisms, both producers and consumers are in there, as well as the cleaners. So we've got all that taken care of. A couple of things that we need to make sure that we're talking about. If we have a school that's still being fogged in the evenings, take and cover these things up with a sheet or some paper. If they're foggy in here, that stuff is meant to kill bacteria and viruses. So we want to cover it up so that doesn't get to our organisms. Our fish and our millipedes and snails will not survive that direct spray. So go ahead and cover it up. That keeps that from getting to the organisms themselves. When you're grabbing buckets, don't just grab any bucket. If you go to your custodian and say, hey, I need a 5-gallon bucket, they're probably going to bring you something that has had chemicals in it before. So those chemicals may be harmful. Even though it's been rinsed out, still might be harmful to the fish and may kill them. Get a bucket from someplace that's a food container. Find something, they sell them at Home Depot and Lowe's. I know that's, you don't want to go buy something else, but you have the ability to do something there, or just use the buckets that come with it. Make sure that you're got them good and clean, and be ready to be able to take care of your critters. Some things that we don't want for us to do. So I've got a list of don'ts here. When you get these, please do not leave the organisms in the box for days and days on end. Again, they have needs. They need air. Closed up in a box does not promote for good air circulation. They need food and water. Some of those terrestrials, those things were kind of dry. They needed to get that out. They need food. So giving our fish the ability to eat from the plants that are here is a great thing. Giving the millipedes the ability to eat on the leaves and the bark and trees that are in there along with the pill bugs is a good thing. If you want to give your millipedes that are big, it's a little bit more food. They love dog food. A little bit of dog food in there and spray it down so it gets a little bit moist. They like that one. Pieces of potato, some lettuce is good for them too. Same thing with the pill bugs. They like to have the potato, lettuce, some celery. That kind of stuff is good for them. So make sure you're taking your animals and giving them all the needs that they have. The plants need some sunlight. You're going to see that it's better that way. So that's why take your buckets, give them a spot where they're going to get some direct sunlight. You're holding for your saplings and your moss. They need some sunlight too. Don't leave your stuff in the bags. Those bags are not meant for them to stay in there for very long. The food that's in there is not for long. They start to poop in there, and that starts to get toxins, and they start drinking from eating from that toxins, and it's not good for them. So make sure you're getting that out of there. Do not pour all the blue water into here. You saw that I didn't do that one. Make sure that you're getting that stuff out. A little bit gets in there. It's not a big deal. We just don't want to put it all in there. Do not put the millipedes and the fish directly in the sunlight, but just allow the plants to get some light. But don't put them directly in the sunlight where all they're going to get is heat and bright. They need to have some shade. They need to have some shelter. It's another need of animals. They need to have shelter. And make sure that you're getting your saplings out of the bags. Make sure you're setting up a holding tank for them. Make sure that they have some water. Make sure that they have some air circulation, and make sure that they have some space. Keep the moss wet. It's one of the things that it really likes. Moss doesn't need a whole lot of light. You know, we've all seen it growing on trees or in the woods, but it needs some, and it definitely needs moisture. It's one of the big things for them. Going into Canvas, there's lots of spots for us to look and see what's there for handling materials. Carolina Science Online in the module section of Canvas is going to give you a spot to get all the print materials, the books, digitally, so you can get a login and password with that. It has the appendices that goes with the teacher's guide, which gives you all of the directions as to what I just did. If you're the kind of person who wants to read through it, it's in the appendix in the back of that teacher's guide. If you have any questions and concerns, ask the veterans on your team. If you don't have one of those, send an email to Warren Potts, W.E. Potts, or to Steve Overholt, S.A. Overholt. That's me, and we'll be glad to help you out. Thank you for watching. Hope this has been helpful. Take care of yourself, take care of these critters, and don't forget, we do science well.